The email came late in the night. Our renowned American news network had invited Captain Ibrahim Traoré, leader of Burkina Faso, to appear live on their prime-time show, Global Power Talks, hosted by none other than former President Donald Trump. No one expected Traoré to accept. This wasn't just a political interview. It was a stage designed to corner, dismiss, and possibly humiliate leaders who challenged Western influence. And Traoré, a young African captain who had risen to power against all odds, was the perfect target. But he said yes, not for pride, not for attention. He said yes for his people. In a modest green uniform, Traoré boarded the plane to New York. No entourage, just his voice and the strength of everything Burkina Faso stood for. Backstage, producers whispered. They laughed even. He won't last 5 minutes, one snorted. What they didn't know was this. Traoré had stood before bullets, betrayal, and broken promises. Words wouldn't shake him. As the countdown Tall Air began, the studio lights turned hot, but Traoré's eyes stayed cool. Their on-air light blinked. The crowd clapped on cue. Cameras panned across the stage as the deep voice of the announcer echoed. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Global Power Talks with your host, President Donald J. Trump. Trump stepped out confidently, waving. The crowd roared. He smiled like he owned the room. Then the camera cut to Traoré. No claps, just silence. He sat, calmly, hands folded, face unreadable. The contrast was chilling. A golden-haired ex-president in a suit versus a young African soldier in a plain green uniform. Trump grinned and leaned forward. So, Captain Burkina Faso, huh? He chuckled slightly, scanning the crowd. I'll be honest, I didn't even know where that was. Until last year. You guys still have electricity there? A few forced chuckles from the audience. Traoré didn't blink. He didn't smile. He just said, we don't export insults. We export courage. The room froze. Trump raised his brow, surprised. The control room scrambled, unsure if they should cut to commercial. But Traoré continued slowly. And I hope today America learned something it can't teach. You could hear a pin drop. Trump leaned back, trying to recover the room with a smirk. I like confidence, he said almost sarcastically. You remind me of me. But let's get real here. You've made some controversial moves, haven't you? Kicking out French troops, rejecting international aid. Some say you're dragging your country backwards. He paused for applause, but none came. Traoré tilted his head, his voice still calm. Mr. Trump, we are not dragging backward. We are climbing out of chains your friends forgot to remove. The studio audience gasped. But Traoré didn't raise his voice. He didn't posture. That was what made it so powerful. He looked around the studio, not at Trump, but at the people watching at home. There's nothing controversial about feeding your own children with your own hands or telling your people. You don't have to beg to breathe. That's not rebellion. That's freedom. Trump sat still. Traoré leaned slightly forward. You asked me here to talk, so let's talk. But note about my country's past. Let's talk about why people like you never expect leaders like me to last. Someone in the crowd whispered, he's not scared. And they were right. Back in Burkina Faso, an old woman named Awasat in a dark room lit by a single candle. Her son had died in 2019, a soldier ambushed during a mission abandoned by foreign allies. She had cried every night since, but tonight she didn't cry. She was watching the interview. Traoré on one side, Trump on the other. Her eyes didn't blink once. Trump leaned in again. So, what gives you the right to reject global powers? Are you even ready to lead? Traoré smiled, but not with joy. It was a sad smile, a knowing one. I buried 23 men with my bare hands. I've written letters to mothers like Awa with shaking fingers, and I've stood in the rain beside wooden coffins, asking myself if we were ever truly free. Awashan reached for the screen. Here, members, she whispered. He remembers them. The camera cut back to Trump. His mouth moved, but his words landed flat. In that moment, millions watching didn't see a debate. They saw one man trying Tawan and another trying to heal. And for many, the healing mattered more. Inside the studio, something shifted. Until now, it had all been subtle. A quiet stare, a steady tone. But when Trey spoke of the mothers who buried sons and the children who never saw light at night, something cracked open. Even the cameraman paused. Trump tried to keep control. Well, look, I get it. You want to be independent, but come on. Your country's economy is what? Smaller than Apple's quarterly revenue. A few chuckles, but weak. Traoré nodded slowly, then stood up. Not aggressively, not loudly, just stood. I don't lead a company, I lead a people. He walked to the edge of the stage and pointed toward the crowd. You measure power in numbers. I measure it in scars, in graves, in the hope of a child holding a flashlight for the first time, because we stopped paying France to take our gold and leave us in the dark. The crowd went silent. One woman in the audience covered her mouth. A man whispered, "That's real." Traoré looked directly into the camera. I didn't come here to argue. I came here to remind the world Burkina Faso is done whispering. And for a moment, even Trump didn't speak. Miles away in a small rural village in Burkina Faso, a boy named Zibo sat huddled beside his grandmother. The generator outside was off, but the old radio crackled with the live English translation of Traoré's voice. Zibo didn't understand every word, but he heard one word repeated again and again. Dignity. Zibo had been waiting since morning for the solar lamp to be delivered. A promise, made by Traoré's team last month. Every village was to receive one. No child left in the dark, the poster said. Suddenly someone knocked. Zibo rushed out barefoot. A young volunteer held a box. Inside a glowing lantern, bright yellow, warm. Zibo cried. His grandmother cried. And as they turned on the radio louder, they heard Traoré say, "No nation is too poor to deserve respect. No child is too far to deserve light." Inside the studio, the audience erupted. Not loud, but honest applause. Trump blinked. No clever comeback. Just a quiet moment where truth filled the room. And for the first time, the show's ratings didn't matter. Human dignity did. A producer zoomed in as Traoré shifted slightly in his chair. For a split second, the camera caught it. A faint scar beneath his collar. Trump noticed, too. "Tell me something, Captain," he said, voice now colder. "Are you trying to play the victim here? That scar? Is that your campaign strategy now?" The audience stiffened. Traoré looked down for a moment. Then he answered softly. "That scar is not from war. It's from silence. From learning to obey men who believed we were born to kneel." The room tensed. I got it when I was 17, beaten by foreign officers in my own land. They said we should be grateful to be trained. His voice did not rise. I didn't cry then. But I cry now for the boys still being trained to obey instead of lead. Even Trump didn't interrupt. No applause, just raw air. Somewhere in the front row, a young black woman in a suit whispered, "God." It wasn't a story about a scar anymore. It was a mirror, and millions watching could see their own pain in that reflection. Traoré paused. The studio lights burned above him, but he didn't flinch. Slowly, he turned to the crowd. 3 years ago, I stood in a concrete room alone. No window, no food, just questions. He looked directly at the camera. They wanted me to sign a letter. It said, "I accepted foreign surveillance in exchange for protection." Trump raised an eyebrow. "You're saying the West tried to blackmail you?" Trey didn't answer with a yes or no. He answered with pain. "I tore the paper. I chose hunger. I chose exile. I chose shame because shame fades, but selling your people never does." A producer whispered behind the scenes. "This isn't what we planned." The interview was spiraling, but not in chaos. It was transforming. Every word, every pause held the weight of history. And for the first time, the crowd looked not at Trump, but at Traoré, like they were seeing something ancient, something sacred. He looked around the room again. "I don't need the world to agree with me. I need them to remember that we were never lost. We were just unheard. Silence, not weakness. Power." Trump finally snapped. "Okay, enough storytelling. Let's get real. Your country's poor. You're under sanctions. You call this leadership? You're romanticizing failure." There was an uncomfortable laugh in the back. Trump smirked, but Traoré only nodded, then said, "Let me tell you, Astri, Mr. Trump." His voice quieted. "During the flood in Kaya, a man came home with trembling hands. He gave me earring. It was his wedding band. His wife had died that year. He said, 'Use this to rebuild the school. I don't need gold to remember her. I need children. To keep living.'" The audience froze. Traoré continued, his voice breaking for the first time. "I still wear that ring on my chain, not as a symbol of wealth, but as a reminder that our people will give everything, even memory, to build hope." Trump didn't speak. He looked small. Traoré looked tired, not weak, but heavy with the weight of his people's dreams. That ring wasn't just jewelry, it was a nation's soul. And now the entire studio was quiet. Not because they were told to be, but because their hearts were listening. There was a silence so deep it made even the sound crew stop breathing. The moderator nervously shuffled her cards. Trump leaned back, arms crossed, visibly annoyed. "So now you're using jewelry and fairy tales to run a country?" The job echoed. Traoré smiled, but not with amusement. "I don't run a country," he said. "I serve a people." The line cut through like lightning. Then after a beat, "Leadership isn't a suit or Asligan. It's standing between your people in pain, even when you have nothing left to give." He turned toward the crowd, then the camera. "I gave up a salary for months. Our cabinet sold Carsto Fund medicine, and we asked for no applause." One woman in the front row began to tear up. Trump tried to interrupt. "You expect us to believe," but he was cut off. Not by Traoré. By the studio clapping, soft at first, then swelling. Traoré never raised his voice, but his truth raised the roof. The live stream chat began to flood. "Who is this man? I'm crying in my living room. This is what real power looks like." Just as the host tried to change the topic, a producer whispered something urgently in her ear. A moment later, a staffer rushed on stage, holding a small, crumpled white envelope. It had arrived just now from the audience. The host hesitated, then handed it to Trey, unsure what it was. He opened it slowly. Inside was a photo. A young boy barefoot standing by a mud wall. The writing on the back said, "His name is Musa. He dreams of being a pilot. Your free school saved his life. Thank you." Beneath it was a tiny folded piece of currency, $5, and a note from Musa's mother. She says she has nothing but wanted to give back. Traoré held the photo in both hands. His voice broke. "She owes me nothing. It is who owe her everything." Even Trump leaned forward, stunned into silence. This was no longer a debate. This was a revelation. People in the crowd began weeping quietly. The camera captured their tears. Someone whispered, "This isn't an interview anymore. This is history." "Tell me something," Trump said suddenly, leaning in. "If you're so beloved, why aren't you in some palace? Why not enjoy the fruits of power?" Traoré gave a half smile. He adjusted his seat, almost uncomfortable with the question. "I gave up my official chair, literally." The crowd blinked. Traoré continued, "Is it on a wooden bench during meetings? I auctioned the presidential chair and used the money to rebuild a maternity ward." The moderator looked shocked. Trump scoffed. "Sounds like a PR stunt." Traoré didn't flinch. "I visited that ward last month. A woman named Isata gave birth on a clean bed for the first time in her life. She named her son Peace." He looked down for a moment as if collecting the weight of the story. "I don't need a golden chair. I need children to be born into dignity." And just like that, a thunderous clap filled the room again. One cameraman whispered, "My God, I just want to hug this man." Viewers online were crying. He wasn't defending himself anymore. He was reminding the world what it meant to lead with love. A question came from a young journalist in the audience. Her voice shook. "Mr. Trey, what made you the way you are?" He paused, then quietly he said, "I'll tell you a story I've never told live." The studio went still. "When I was 10, my mother sold her only pair of earrings so I could buy shoes for school, but they were used shoes with holes." He looked down as if remembering the pain in his toes. "I wore them anyway. I walked miles to learn. I failed some classes. I got back up. I watched my friends die of hunger and war, but I kept walking. Trump looked confused. The crowd looked emotional. And now, Traoré continued, I don't wear designer shoes in power. I still wear simple boots. To remind myself that I lead for children walking in holes. The room erupted into applause again. One audience member whispered, I can't stop crying. The live stream chat was overwhelmed with, protect this man at all costs. Now I understand everything. That hit my soul, and just like that, the world saw the boy inside the leader. For the first time, Donald Trump didn't interrupt. He didn't smirk. He just looked at Traoré long and quiet. Maybe it was respect or shock or something he'd never felt before. The moderator asked gently, Mr. Traoré, do you ever feel like giving up? The room held its breath. Traoré nodded. Every night, even the camera crew froze. I cry. I miss my mother. I miss silence. I miss being unknown. Sometimes I want to go back to being that boy with nothing. He looked around, then added, but I look at the faces of my people, and I remember that I was born for this. A tear rolled down the cheek of a man in the third row. Then Traoré said something that hit like thunder. Leadership isn't about who you impress. It's about who you refuse to abandon. The audience stood. Yes. And stood in the middle of the broadcast. Even Trump stood up awkwardly, like something inside him had cracked. The live stream flooded with, he's not just a leader, he's a light. This is their earliest moment on television. Someone hugged him and suddenly the debate was over. This was now a testimony. Just before the show was about to close, the producer interrupted again. Ibrahim, she said, there's one more envelope. The audience turned. Traoré opened it. Inside was a letter written in pencil, barely legible. Dear Captain, my dad died in the north fighting for Burkina. He told me you are the only one who visited his camp. He said you shared your bread with him. Thank you for loving my father. From Hissan, Isa, age 9. The entire studio went silent. No one breathed. Traoré held the letter to his chest. He shut his eyes. Then he stood up, turned to the camera, and said to Isa, your father was a hero, and you're not alone. Every child in Burkina is my family, and I will never stop fighting for you. A sob broke out in the audience. Even Trump looked away, blinking fast. The camera zoomed in on Traoré's eyes, and shining but unbroken. The comments exploded. This broke. Me. I'm crying. I can't stop. He carries a nation in his heart. It was no longer about politics. It was about humanity. As the camera zoomed in for one final wide shot, Trump leaned forward and whispered, but the mic caught every word. I judged you. Too fast. You remind me of the kind of man I wish I'd been when I was young. The entire room froze. Traoré blinked. It's not too late to fight for others. Trump chuckled oddly soft. Maybe I'm not strong like you, but I see now you fight without ego. The former president stood and faced the audience. I was wrong, he said into the mic. This man isn't just a leader. He's a servant of his people, and the world needs more of that. The crowd gasped, then erupted. Some clapped, some cried. Some did both. Traoré extended his hand. Trump shook it, both men humbled by the moment. The moment went viral in real time. Traoré the truth. Quiet strength. Real leadership. One woman in the audience held her chest, tears running down. My father died. In silence, she whispered, but now I've seen what dignity sounds like. For the first time in the broadcast, there was no division, only one heartbeat. As the cameras began to wrap, the producer went on stage one last time. There's a call from Ouagadougou. A live message. Traoré nodded. The screen behind them lit up. An elderly woman appeared. Her name was Madame Sao, a school teacher who once taught Traoré under a mango tree. Ibrahim, she said gently, do you remember the poem I made you recite when you had no shoes? Traoré smiled, his voice breaking. Yes, Madame Sao. She raised a piece of paper and read, you may walk without gold, but your truth will shine. You may sleep without light, but your words will guide. A poor boy with courage can lead kings with his spine. Traoré stood speechless. So did the entire room. Madame Sao added, You were always more than a soldier. You were my hope. People in the studio began crying openly. So did many watching live. The live stream chat flooded. I can't stop crying. My chest is tight. This is beautiful. My God, I've never respected a leader this much. And then the final moment came. One camera stayed on Traoré, tears in his eyes, but his back still straight, a mountain in human form. As the interview ended, the moderator asked one final question. If the world could hear only one message from you, Ibrahim, what would it be? He took a long breath. Then, calmly, he said, "Do not wait to be rich to care. Do not wait to be powerful to protect. You don't need money to feed someone. You need heart. We are not born to dominate each other. We are born to carry each other." The audience wept. The live stream reached 1.2 million viewers in real time. Ambassadors watching overseas wiped tears from their faces. Children in schools across Africa watched, wide-eyed, and deep in the heart of Burkina Faso, a boy named Issa whispered, "That's my president." As the studio dimmed and the credits rolled, the final shot was Traoré. Standing alone, peaceful, powerful, a leader the world had tried to underestimate, but who ended up breaking hearts, lifting souls, and changing history. Now, dear viewers, if this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to this channel, and comment below. Long live true leadership. Or tell us what part of the story made you cry the most. Your voice matters. Your heart matters. And together we carry each other. I'll be reading every single comment. Let's talk below.